Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Phil Perry alongside. This is The Aftermath. And it's the aftermath of a 38-10 beatdown of the Miami Dolphins in the season finale. Patriots finish 14-3, 10-win improvement over last season. That ties an NFL record for one-season improvements. Patriots are going to get the Chargers. We don't know yet when, Phil, but the Patriots end up with the number 2 seed. Chargers are number 7. Yeah, 2v7. And we're going to dive into the matchup as the week goes along. But right now, let's listen to Mike Vrabel when he talks about what it took to get where the Patriots have gotten.
Get the right guys in the building at the right time, and we got good quarterback play. We figured out how to not beat ourselves. I think we play to an identity, and guys make plays. That's what happens. So I'm excited for all those guys that, again, when you chase wins, usually the production comes along with it. And so we need to focus on winning and the efforts that are going to help us win. And in turn, you end up with all the plays that you're going to need. And I think you saw that.
Phil, I talked about this a little bit on Quick Slants the other day. I think this season is historic. I think people in New England are going to remember this season for a long, long time.
I agree. Just because of the surprising nature of the results, the quarterback play being sublime, which it has been. I mean, it's been one of the best quarterbacked seasons in Patriots history, and this is a franchise that had the greatest to ever do it for 20 years. And this season is up there with some of the best seasons that Brady's had when you're talking about the statistics, and I would say even just the sheer number of impressive throws. So there's a lot of reasons to remember it. Mike Vrabel's first season, to have the success they've had, this has to be one of the most enjoyable seasons I think a Patriots fan has had in a while, Tom, because even when they were great and the Super Bowls were great, those seasons were so loaded with expectation that if they didn't meet those lofty expectations, there was disappointment, there was frustration, even in Super Bowl winning seasons, in a way that I think those feelings, those negative feelings, almost didn't exist this year.
As I've said many times, these are the good old days for this edition of the Patriots. In many ways similar to the 2001 season. Remember, 2001, they finished 11-5. They were 5-5 at one point. Obviously capped it with one of the most amazing upsets in NFL history, professional sports history over the last 50 years, perhaps ever. It's the greatest team anyone's ever seen, and we got to watch it. I mean, we are lucky. We are lucky.
No question about that.
People are going to talk about the downgrade of the schedule. We're going to get into the matchup and the things the Patriots have to prove or would like to prove in the playoffs. But when we talk about the Patriots, they did play a historically bad schedule as well. Going into today, they were the only team who had fewer than 100 combined wins from their opponents, 99. The second fewest were the Denver Broncos. Their opponents through 16 weeks had 105. By contrast, the Rams, their opponents had 145 combined wins. But when we talk about the schedule, we also have to look at something vital, which is how the Patriots do against that schedule. They outscored their opponents this season by 170 points, second most in the league, trailing only the Seattle Seahawks. So when you look at all of that, do you think the Patriots are at risk of being exposed as a paper tiger?
No.
A fraud candidate to the playoffs and not really an actual number 2 seed?
I don't. I do think it's an odd year in that the first seed, the second seed, maybe for some people, they are not led by perennial all-pro quarterbacks. Now, Drake may become that, right? And who knows what Bo Nix will become. He, to me, is almost the weak link of that number 1 seeded Denver Broncos team this year. So it's a little bit of an unusual year as far as that goes. But the reason I don't think the Patriots are going to be exposed, Tom, is because we have seen them play good teams, the Bills primarily, and beat them on the road, and play another game where they should have beat them at home. But, 2 or 3 plays go a little bit differently, and maybe they've swept one of the best teams in the AFC in Buffalo. And they have just absolutely boat raced the bad teams. And I think that matters to your point differential point. they're not just squeaking by the Dolphins and the Jets and the Giants of the world. I mean, they are blowing them away, which is what good teams should do to bad teams. This is a good team, period.
Look what they did to the Panthers, who eventually did they wind up a playoff team?
Good question. I don't know.
I think they did. I think they did with the Atlanta win. A lot of stuff going on while we're doing pre-games and all that. We don't care about the NFC. However, I have an interesting question for you, Phil.
Panthers did make it, 4 seed.
Thank you. Who in the AFC playoff contingent would the Patriots be favored against on a neutral field?
Ooh, good question.
Thanks, buddy. You got.
I think the Chargers, and maybe the Texans, if they're just looking, if
they would be favored over Pittsburgh,
and over the NFC North, whoever comes out of the NFC or AFC North, excuse me.
All right.
Right.
Yeah, they would be favored over either of those teams. They would be favored over 12-5 Houston. They're going to be favored over the Chargers. Would they be favored over Jacksonville on a neutral field?
I think they would on a neutral field. I think coaching and quarterback matters so much when we talk about these things. And I'm not even going to try to put myself in the minds of the wise guys in Vegas. Like neutral field, I think they would be favored over the Jacksonville
I don't think
Jaguars.
there's a single matchup in the AFC in which you're going to see a spread more than 4 points. Probably all of them will be less than 4 points. That's how wide open it is. There's just no matchup, not even a matchup you could conjure where you'd say, well, that's going to be a blowout, which goes to the reason I'm asking is it's just wide open. So no matter if the Patriots played the worst schedule that anyone's ever seen in their frickin' life or not, they all played flawed teams this year because there's a whole many flawed teams. Mm-hmm. The Patriots go into the playoffs. We'll talk a little bit about the game and some other stuff too, but the Patriots are going to go into the playoffs with one of the least experienced teams on the surface. Rookie left tackle, a rookie if Jared Wilson returns at left guard, a second-year quarterback,
rookie running back who's going to get a lot of work.
Yep.
Right,
a lot of guys who have played just 17 games together and met each other in July. I think that experience is somewhat offset by the coaching staff, and because the coaching staff and the team is led by Mike Vrabel, who delivered what I thought was a really interesting message about playoff football when asked Sunday night.
You better be able to do that in the tournament. You better be able to take care of the football. You better be able to create some turnovers, and you have to have efficient quarterback play. That's no secret. And you're going to have to execute situations like we did at the end of half, whether that be at the end of the half or the end of game to get some points or. But that's what it comes down to.
He's already distilling what the team has to really focus on. And there's going to be much more complicated X's and O's and scheme stuff that they'll get into. But it's really, I think, important to distill the things that you have to worry about. Turnovers, stopping yourself from committing them, creating them, having efficiency at the end of the half, which really helped the Patriots save 3 points that they almost pissed away. It could have been a 10-7 game at the half. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Or was it 10-7?
No, it ended up being 17-10 at the half.
Thank you. So those elements have to be there. And I think that having McDaniels with Drake Maye and having Vrabel on the sideline with 3 Super Bowls he's played in, having coached the team to the AFC Championship, having guys like Morgan Moses, who played for the Ravens, Carlton Davis, who won a Super Bowl, Wilton Williams, who won a Super Bowl, Diggs, who played one of the most unbelievable games and made one of the most astonishing plays in NFL history when he had a catch against the New Orleans Saints in the playoffs a few years ago. These guys do have playoff experience, while on the surface you look at them and go, they're wet behind the ears.
Yeah, and I wonder how much Vrabel will be able to sort of blunt that inexperience through coaching and in their preparation for this game. And again, we don't know when they'll play at this point. You listening to this probably do by now. But I'm not sure, based on what we've learned about this team, and they can't prove that they're ready for the moment until they play in the moment and execute in the moment. But is there anything that would suggest to you, Tom, that the moment will feel too big for them when they are at home and hosting the Chargers next weekend in the most important game of their lives?
There's going to be a mistake or two made because guys might try and do too much.
Tight. or maybe doing too much.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that it could conceivably start with the quarterback, because before Josh McDaniels got here, there were occasions when he tried to do too much. I'm not saying that will happen over the course of the game. He's just in a terrific position because he has seen what listening to Josh McDaniels will help him do, listening to Ashton Grant will do. They'll help him. Listening to Hunter Henry or Stephon Diggs or trusting Garrett Bradbury or Morgan Moses. He's surrounded by so many people, and he's reaped the benefits of throttling back his game and his decision-making, that even if he does stray because he's a 23-year-old second-year player, he'll be able to get corrected. And I think that's one of the interesting things we talked about on Post Game Live is the difference between Drake Maye and Josh Allen, to whom he's frequently compared. Drake Maye has already seemingly excised so many of the demons that plague Josh Allen with trying to say, I wonder if I can do this. And he's kind of stopped doing that.
I can't really remember the last time he's tried to do something ridiculous that has led to a bad decision. There was a throw against the Dolphins that I thought was an odd one. It was to start, I think it was their first drive in the second quarter offensively, and he threw a little curl to Kayshon Boutte, who was clearly covered and felt like it was almost deflected and picked, and just sort of a little bit of an odd decision. But it wasn't him trying to do something crazy. That was a pretty mundane, run-of-the-mill type of pass. And the reason why, and again, because they haven't been there yet, I would completely leave open the possibility that the moment gets to them in a way that it's hard for us to anticipate. Drake Maye's been really good in pressure-packed situations this year.
Yeah, he doesn't make bad situations worse.
They haven't been in that many, but the end of the Ravens game, the end of the first Bills game, I guess you could point to the end of the second Bills game where the Bills really shut down the Patriots offense through that whole second half. Tampa at the end of the half. Like, when he's under stress, he seems to be the kind of person who comes through. So this will be a stressful situation, and we'll see how he handles it. But I think to this point, I am led to believe, based on what we've seen, that he's not going to be incredibly rattled.
No. And being rattled, I think you're going to make a mistake. And you might make a mistake. You might commit a sin sin of commission as opposed to omission. You might do something dumb. But will it dent his confidence and poise? Brady made stupid plays. It didn't dent his confidence. It usually didn't compound. It would help him redouble his efforts and not question himself. And the reason I'm talking about the playoff performance is they're going to go against a team that's really interesting in the Chargers. Justin Herbert is dogged by, you can't win in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson, for all the brilliance that he's shown, he's going to be one of the most unique players in football, one of the most productive players in football. Even if he retired now, could be a Hall of Fame level quarterback. Probably not, but it's hard. But he's made the case. But what would hold him back? Playoff performance. All the things the Patriots have done so far, I'm not saying they're null and void. I've already told you you're going to remember them for decades. But this week is critical, and this game is critical because of the performance. You can lose 28-27 and play your ass off, and you just get Herberted. But they don't generally do that. So this is the capstone portion of the Patriots season. This is the final exam. This is the Blue Book essay. Show why all the things that you did during the regular season that counted for a portion of your grade go to this that counts, 25% of your grade?
Yeah, and because
I'm crazy with the metaphor here.
No, that's all right. We totally understand what you're saying. The listeners understand. The viewers understand. This will be the kind of game where, talking about confidence, especially for young players' first experience through the postseason, I don't think they're lacking for it. But it will be the kind of game, if they can win it, that gives them much greater standing in the eyes of folks who have not been paying a lot of attention to their season here. Because, okay, you're in the postseason now. You're playing against one of the best quarterbacks in football. We thought your schedule sucked. The numbers say that your schedule is one of the worst we've ever seen. And yet, you're able to host a playoff game and beat up on a good, though clearly not perfect, Chargers team. And so now we view you as worthy. And I wonder, what a win like that would do for them. Maybe it wouldn't do much at all, Tom. Maybe it would just do something for the people who comment on the sport. Right. But I would think for a team that's as young as this one, winning any game in the postseason, whether or not it improves your standing in the eyes of the people who talk about the game, would do a lot for you.
And I've said before, what difference does it make? And it makes difference in the offseason. It doesn't make a difference in the regular season, but it does make a difference as to the storyline that will continue to follow you in the offseason. You don't want to be one and done. And as you were talking, I have a season that's a parallel to this point. And it's a good one to use as an example of a meltdown. The Patriots in 2010 went 14-2. Tom Brady was the unanimous MVP, first time that had ever happened. They played the Jets. Brady had a bad pick on a screen. And Patrick Chung, I still don't know what was going on that play, but it's his second year. He called for a fake punt, and it went kablooey. And that Patriots team lost to Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez, and the Jets went to the AFC Championship and lost to the Steelers. But that was an extremely young team with 2 first-year tight ends. And I'm not sure if Danny Woodhead was the back or if it was still Fred Taylor. Whatever. It was an extremely young team. Brady had established himself a bit at that point. But it is a decent parallel, right?
Yeah.
To make what point? I don't know.
Well, it's a great example of what
a team just going kablooey
you don't want to have happen to you in the first round. I think this is a good matchup for them. I said before the game began today between the Patriots and Dolphins, it's important that they treat this game as they have treated all of their regular season games, which is to win it and to win it emphatically if possible, which they did. And so good on them for that. But I felt as though the number 2 seed was really important because as much as you want to maybe face the Chargers, if you're out there listening to this, you like this matchup, I think you should. There are some obvious flaws with the Chargers that the Patriots, I think, will be able to exploit. You also want to avoid Josh Allen and the Bills, I think. And they were able to do that. Had they lost, maybe fallen to the 3rd seed, now you're talking about hosting a team that was just here and just erased a 21-point lead that you had and was able to beat you here. So, and also happens to possess maybe the best quarterback, most talented quarterback in the game right now. So, I like the way they finished the season, Tom, and I don't think we should just glaze over that because we have a playoff matchup now that we can dive into.
Perfect.
Because it's just the fact that they really were unrelenting against these bad teams at the end of the season is really impressive to me.
And that's a great segue because let's talk a little bit about the game and its relevance going forward. Here's Mike Vrabel talking about the matchup with Miami.
A little lull there in the second quarter, but I really appreciate the way that the defense responded after the block to force them to make a long kick. And then the way the offense was able to go back and get Andy into field goal range and fantastic kick by him. So I tried to ask them to replicate those last 2 series and that intensity and that execution as we went into the second half, and I think that's what we saw.
So on the game, Phil, Patriots open up with a easy breezy touchdown drive of 2 plays, and then they follow that up with another touchdown. It's 14-0. You think that Miami has one ass cheek in the hammock and the party's over? Nope. The rest of the half goes not that great. They were a little porous defensively in the run game. Quinn Ewers played well for a guy on a team that's just has nothing to play for. What happened out there?
Well, it just felt like, they took turns, the offense and defense, taking their naps in that first half. The offense was hot knife through butter through the first quarter, and it looked like it was going to just be a laugher, like it was going to be a repeat of that Jets game. And then they did something odd. Their 3rd drive, after averaging almost 11 yards per carry through 2 series, their 3rd drive, they go throw. And it was incomplete, and had to punt, and it felt like that stalled everything. Now, the defense did show up in the second quarter. The offense, not so much, but the defense played pretty well. They generated a turnover. They had a 3-and-out. And so it was like they just couldn't put it all together first quarter, second quarter, and they end up kind of in a game that should have been much less competitive by the time halftime rolled around. And we were pretty critical of them during our halftime show. But, boy, that second half was that was anything but disjointed. That was dominant.
Phil, it was interesting. We also noted that there were a number of good plays in the first half. Sometimes when you think of egg laying, it's soup to nuts, a whole bunch of 3-and-outs, long drives against you, resulting in touchdowns. But it wasn't that. There was a sack from Milton Williams in his return, or a tackle for loss, a sack by Barmore, which much needed from him in terms of production. I thought Drake Maye had, again, 3 or 4 different plays where you go, holy crap, that's just really ridiculous. There was a stiff arm play in the scramble and completion. His numbers weren't there, and we'll have plenty of time for MVP conversations going forward. And the fact that the Patriots chose to run the ball in instead of giving Maye bogus 1-yard touchdown throws. And Steve Hamlin, our producer, reports that there was a record set by Matthew Stafford with touchdown throws of 1 yard, and he had 13 of them. Is that accurate?
I couldn't find that. What I found on Sports Info Solutions was from 2 yards and in, I believe they finished with 11.
Okay, then 13 1 yard.
2-yard touchdown passes, which led the league.
That's a lot. And Stafford had another very productive day. He's had a great season.
He's had a great season.
You can't, if Matthew Stafford wins the MVP, you can say, oh, that really sucks. I think Maye was the MVP. But you can't say it's going to a bad player in a bad year.
No, you can't. It's hard for me to argue that side of it, and you would have to make a very thorough argument to me to be able to convince me that it's Stafford over Maye, but he's had an amazing season. He's had an amazing career. Not to get too far off track on this, but I did find, and Mark Bertrand pulled this up earlier this week when talking about MVPs and their history and just in terms of winning games, and it made me think of this stat when I heard Maye talking about what he felt was his greatest accomplishment this year was helping the team win 14 games and go undefeated on the road.
Which is what I wanted to play next in my handy-dandy. I forgot my computer at home today, so I had to do everything on my phone. Notepad here for the pod plan.
That's the first thing that comes to mind. 14 wins and probably 8-0 on the road. That's probably the biggest thing I'm most proud of. Is going on the road 8 times and coming out, victorious all of them. So that was pretty cool. And from there, I think just the ability to get a lot of people involved. I think that's one of the best things about our offense. We get a lot of people involved, a lot of people catching passes, a lot of people scoring touchdowns. A lot of guys that are making plays at different parts of the game, and I think that's one of the toughest things about the ways to defend us.
And so the reason why I wanted to hear that sound again is because when it comes to wins and losses, that generally speaking seems to be a thing that the voters concern themselves with. Easy for me to say, when they're voting for MVP. Because only 2 quarterbacks since 2000 have won the MVP award and not won their division. Only 2. Peyton Manning in 2008. They went 12-4 that year.
I voted for Chad Pennington, and they won the division. The Dolphins.
The Dolphins won the division.
I'll never. Everyone. When I get lowered into my grave, and you read the obituary, somewhere in there it better say, Curran voted for Chad Pennington for MVP in 2008.
You're gonna have the teal and orange on
Hopefully
in the casket.
It would be great if he was there.
That would be
At least comes to the wake.
He's been on the podcast.
Yeah.
I think he'd be willing to make that sacrifice
Chad
for
Pennington would be willing to be a pallbearer.
So we got Florio.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
We got Pennington. Who else?
That's 2 West Virginia guys.
Sorry. Well,
That's 2 West Virginia guys. I might just have straight West Virginia. Oh, shit.
What are the odds? Randy Moss?
Randy
get him
G,
involved?
Jason Williams.
That'd be great.
Jerry West.
But again, I think
Not gonna have Jerry
winning
West.
matters when we're talking about this argument. I know we're not even really talking about MVP here tonight, but I think winning matters. It was Steve McNair was the other one, and he actually split the award with Manning.
Yes, he did.
They had
2003.
co-MVPs. And I'm just talking quarterbacks, which obviously is primarily who wins the award. Adrian Peterson, when he won MVP, I believe his team was also a wild card team. Be that as it may, it's rare for a guy to be named MVP and not come in first in his division, which is what would happen with Matthew Stafford if he ended up winning it this year.
It does take a lifetime achievement type situation for him to be considered. If this was Kirk Cousins who had that kind of year and his team finished fifth overall as the fifth seed and didn't win its division, and he threw 45 touchdowns, I think people would have a harder time saying it and playing for Atlanta. They would have a harder time. I just think Matthew Stafford, because you got a player who's going from taking the team from 3-14 to 14-3, having the massive statistical edge, and you really have to squint hard to find the place that he doesn't beat Stafford, and that is strength of schedule, which Dan Orlovsky, who we love, said he would cast his vote in favor of Matthew Stafford, a former teammate, instead of. And you can use strength of schedule if you want to and really examine how important that was. But even that, if you examine strength of schedule and look at the fact that the Patriots were second in point differential, that against good teams and playoff teams, whether it be Carolina or prospectively the Ravens or Buffalo, he played very well. Or in the common games point, Phil. What was that again?
Yeah, the common games. They've got 6 common games. Stafford was 4-2 against those teams. Drake Maye was 6-0. And really across the board, the statistics are better for Maye, especially when you look at some of the more advanced stuff like EPA. But even some of the more traditional stats, he had him edged in those games. And so, it's just the strength of schedule thing is a thing. I appreciate you if you include it as part of your reasoning. We had one of the AP voters, one of the 50 who will help decide that award on Next Pats with us last week, and Mike Sando from The Athletic, and he said the strength of schedule really not a thing for him. And so I just wonder, like, so much of this just depends on who's making the choice, right? Mm-hmm. What do those people value? And I'm sure there'll be people who value it. There'll be others like Sando who don't as much. I just think you can still dock Maye for the strength of schedule thing and still allow for the fact that he has been the most valuable player because of what's around him and because of how good he was against that lesser competition.
What I think is hard when you have humans involved in making a subjective decision on presenting an award is how many of them start at 0 and then compare and build their case, and how many of them start with a conclusion and then build the case to prove themselves right. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that many people in New England, fans, would be of the latter because you have a rooting interest. You're not objective. My stomach's making noise again. It's 9:34 Sunday night. Haven't had dinner. We're going to pull the plug on the aftermath. Got plenty to get to this week.
All right.
I took notes during post-game live. We got so much to get to, including the dulcet tones of Will Campbell, which will be at the top of the Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast coming up this week. Phil, thanks so much. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.